Immigration will be an important topic this election cycle, but it's a bit different here in New York than how the national political campaigns frame it. Look, here, most people want comprehensive immigration reform. Most people support the use of federal lands for temporary migrant centers. But about 30% of New Yorkers also are concerned about what those migrant centers do to communities, like in Clinton Hill. So that's our issue on this episode of Your Voice Matters. So, Femi, immigration is kind of part of the DNA of New York. And we've literally got the Statue of Liberty telling people, give me your tired, your poor, huddled masses, right? So, how has immigration become kind of almost a different topic for this election cycle?
What's really interesting about New York is 37% of all New Yorkers are immigrants, and that doesn't even include first generation kids. So when we talk about immigration in the city, unlike other places around the country, we're not talking about, this abstract idea. We're talking about things that like we all live and we all experience this. We see this in like Little Italy, Chinatown, Koreatown, all of our neighborhoods. So immigration is undeniably a part of just the fabric of New York City.
There is a tendency sometimes when we talk about a big idea like this to make it kind of nameless, faceless people. How did you tackle this story?
Yeah, so in order to avoid that, because that is undeniably my pet peeve, I started in Corona, Queens with a basketball team named the Raccoons. We met them during a story that Epicenter NYC covered. It was started by David Valencia and his partner, Lorena Valero. And what's so interesting about this team is the team is made up of primarily immigrants and migrant kids, some who speak English, some who speak Spanish, some who speak both.
Lo mismo los niños que han llegado, por ejemplo, de Venezuela, de Ecuador, y como encontrar acá amigos que hablan inglés y español, también les ha ayudado como a querer más el deporte.
And so this basketball team, it's able to not only help kids learn English, but it also helps them find belonging, especially when they find themselves in a new city, and a city that sometimes, can appear hostile based off of just some of the reporting that we've seen over the past few years.
Why did you want to join the team?
Because I wanted to play basketball for fun and to make friends.
So to have my coaches and my friends that they support me.
Do you like playing on a team where everybody speaks English and Spanish? Why?
Because I can understand them more, because I speak both languages.
We know why 28% of Americans might think immigration is the number one topic, right? You see campaign ads, you see all the national kind of chatter about this, but why is it so important in neighborhoods in New York City?
Yeah, so you take a neighborhood like Clinton Hill in Brooklyn. In Clinton Hill, 2 migrant shelters opened up, and when they are at capacity, it has enough beds for just over 4,000 men. And so you think about the small neighborhood of Clinton Hill, and that is a high volume of people that were placed in the neighborhood without a lot of resources, according to a lot of the community members that live there.
It goes from one end of the block to the other. It goes to Flushing.
Oh, so that whole...
From Rising to Hall, from Hall, Park Avenue to Flushing.
Yukiko Marshall, she's a construction worker, and she really explains how having these shelters in Clinton Hill have really impacted just the community vibe and their way of life.
What's your favorite memory when you were a kid being raised here? What was your favorite memory?
Just the neighborhood. Like, the neighborhood was neighborhoodish. All the families got along. We had big block parties here. Got in trouble, someone knew about it.
Yukiko's family has been there for over 60 years. They were the first Black family when they moved on the block. And so Yukiko grew up there.
I spoke to a couple of different people in the neighborhood. They all tell me that it went from a lot of the elderly folks spending their summers, for example, outside on the stoops, and now that comfort level is gone.
Yeah, they don't come out. I mean, the days are short. You just come out with here, card tables and music, and just up and down the street, strolling and go across streets to one another's homes, sit, do gardening and stuff like that. That don't happen anymore.
And why? Tell me exactly why.
The disrespect. They'll sit on your steps, roll their weed up, smoke their weed, drinking, fighting, talking. And if you ask them to move, or you ask them, can you please, get right on the block, they'll get disrespectful.
Someone listening to this might say that some of the complaints in the neighborhood are
biased or anti-immigrant or xenophobic. What do you say to that?
No, absolutely not. We feed them. We clothe them. I'm giving away so much. I mean, and I'm looking around like the winter's coming. I got to give this guy something. Like, these are people. They're human beings. They don't deserve to get kicked out of this shelter 6 a.m, can't go back into a certain time of night. Putting 4,000 people in one. Imagine putting 100 people in this building. What would happen?
Right.
You go crazy, right? I just feel like this is a bad situation, and it's right in front of my face. I've never came this close to seeing how people are being abused on both sides.
When all of these new visitors, so to speak, are in this neighborhood, and a lot of them are men in these shelters, what are they doing during the day?
Yeah, and that's exactly some of the frustrations that a lot of the neighbors have. They want to know why they aren't able to get work authorization so that they can have things to do during the day.
They can't work. Legally, they can't work. Right? I believe most of them have skills. They didn't just come here. They got painters, carpenters, chefs. Why are we not letting them? Because the system is broken.
Right.
So that goes back to elections. How are you going to fix it?
So let's go upstairs to the federal race and the different viewpoints that Donald Trump and Kamala Harris have about immigration.
Harris criticizes family separation and supports allowing undocumented spouses of citizens to apply for a green card. On her website, she says flat out that she knows the system is broken, and reform includes stronger security and an earned pathway to citizenship. Between speeches and advisors, what we're hearing is that Trump wants to reinstate some of his more punitive immigration policies from his last term, like the Remain in Mexico program. He also wants to ramp up large-scale mass deportations to discourage future waves of asylum seekers. But I do want to circle back to Yukiko's point that she made earlier about work authorization. Neither of the candidates have mentioned bringing in an earlier version of work authorization so that it doesn't take so long. Neither Harris nor Trump has mentioned that. Felipe de la Hoz, who is on the editorial board of the Daily News and who writes a lot of our analysis pieces over at Epicenter NYC, he suggests that asylum seekers are processed using a system similar to refugees.
What I have advocated for some time is that we have an infrastructure for refugee resettlement that is pretty robust.
Sometimes people have a tendency to see immigration with such kind of a broad brush that the terms underneath it, like what kind of immigrant you are, whether you're an asylum seeker or whether you're a refugee, they all just kind of get lumped into the same bundle.
Yeah, immigration is complicated. Make no mistake. I even myself will sometimes get very confused in terms of refugee versus asylum seeker. So a lot of the difference is how they come into the country and how they're processed. Someone seeking asylum has to meet the same criteria as a refugee. But since asylum seekers entered the country on their own, they're stuck in this sort of legal limbo until their date before an immigration court.
If there were supports in place to provide work authorization and legal services and maybe like some housing assistance, not just in shelter, but like to obtain housing, maybe not in New York City. I've said before that I think it makes sense to look elsewhere, right, where maybe housing is a little bit cheaper and there's a greater labor demand, but like set them up in a way where the path to self-sufficiency is much shorter. People might balk at kind of the upfront costs, which will be higher, but in the long run, I think the cost would be far lower.
So then what's the bottom line for New Yorkers who want to just vote in a way that gives them the best city possible?
Think about like who has actually articulated policies that seem workable, because a lot of this is just rhetoric. Think about not just like today, right now, but like in a year, in 5 years, where does this end the best? I would also say, like, let's try to keep some of the numbers in mind here, right? The population of New York City is, I think, 8.3 million right now, roughly. So that's far less than like 0.5%. Like, it's just nothing. I mean, it's just like not going to move the needle. And New York City has been losing population, right? We lost a congressional seat or two even, because our population decreased in the last census. It might be beneficial to have a little bit of kind of additional intake to kind of supplant maybe some of the lost workforce.
What do you think about immigration in general?
The government needs to make it more easier for people to be legal. And I think the process is, it just takes too long and it's too tedious.
Since you had these different conversations, how do you think how important is immigration as a topic to this election?
It is very complicated, much like all things New York City. So, one thing that Felipe points out is that immigrants are vital to New York. They are economic drivers. You think about the ways that a lot of immigrants, they create businesses. That is something important to our local economy. But at the same time, when you look at a community like Clinton Hill, they would like for this community that they've loved, they've lived in, they grew up in, they would like it to go back to having, the services that they used to have.
Okay. What about the neighborhood here in Queens?
Yeah, so Corona has a very large immigrant and first generation population. And so their feelings on immigration kind of varied. But one consistent thing that we did hear was just really the vast amount of patriotism that everyone had.
Are you planning on voting in this election?
Claro, claro que sí. Apenas me hice ciudadana. Mi esposo es ciudadano americano y por supuesto que vamos a presentar nuestro voto.
Congratulations. So will this be your first election that you'll vote in? Oh, that's so exciting.
Excited.